sir. We welcome you to this episode. Sir, over the memory lane, what are the challenges or what are the turning points in your life that you can recollect now?
There were several major turning points in my life. If I recall, the first one, when I left my native place after completing my 7th standard. The reason was very simple and straightforward. During those days, there was no high school in my native place called Kokkada. There was only government higher primary school. So I could educate myself from first standard to 7th standard. Thereafter, I had to go to another place 6 kilometers away from my native place called Arasinamakki. There was one high school. So there was no transportation. I had to go by foot. And my grandfather did not allow me because he was pampering me as a child, and he was telling me, no, he did not have the confidence that I could walk by foot that distance. But my father's sister's house was in Dharmasthala. My father's sister's husband was the chief cook for Dr. Virendra Hegde during those days. And he was also a cook for the guest house. So I had to stay in his house. It means a kind of experience which is nothing but, away from my parental caring or sharing or nurturing or pampering, to be precise. A kind of new atmosphere, new environment. I had to adjust myself with that. So it was a shock of my life. It was just like, taking away the life supporting system all of a sudden without giving any notice to you. So it means I had to come to terms with those points at that time. But anyway, I learned life would be bitter, and people cannot spoon feed me any longer. I must learn how to stand up on my own feet, and I have to ensure my own survival, growth, and excellence. So at that time I realized how to be an alien in my own place. It means it was not at all a home away from home. No, as I said, different kind of environment. A kind of suffocation was there. New relationships, new style of living, because I had to serve food in the chatras or the guest houses for one or two batches of pilgrims. After that, I had to take my food. Then study purpose and all in Vasantamal, just in front of Manjunath temple. I was fond of reading under what you call tube light, because during those days tube light was very, very precious, and it was not available for Tom, Dick and Harry. So I had a desire of reading under the light, that tube light. So the only place was Vasantamal. I used to read up to 10 o'clock. Then I used to sleep there only. Got up early in the morning, 5:30 or so. Go to the temple pond. Once the archaks or the priests completed their bath and other things, when they go out, then I used to go there, take a tumbler and take bath in the temple. And no soap. The soap used by the priests for washing their undergarments and other things, it was sticking to the, the rock-like thing, So then after completing my bath and other things, I used to go to the temple, take darshan of Lord Manjunath Swami, then go to my relative's place, eat yesterday's leftover, previous night's leftover, then go to my high school.
Life was
Difficult. Then evening, again 5 o'clock I used to come home. Then 5 to 6, they were teaching this mantras and all those things. Scriptures, Vedic scriptures. Then I had a temperament at that time. See, you cannot go against the currents. You must go along with the currents. That is one thing. Second thing is, I cannot change others' mindset.
We have to change ourselves.
because charity should always begin at home. Unless I change my mindset, unless I change my perception, thought process, feelings, and action tendencies, I cannot influence the thought process of others. I realize that. Then another, you may call it a mischief or whatever it is, I used to question everything during those days. I was a real headache for all these people, teachers, and particularly the priest who was teaching me the Vedic scriptures. Then he was telling me, after a week, you must mug up everything by heart, rote learning, then reproduce and present it. Otherwise, I'll punish you. I could not do it because by hearting was not my cup of tea. If I understand it, then I can reproduce it. I can digest it, internalize it, and reproduce it. Yeah. Because I was not doing any Sanskrit things, my language is Kannada, and a bit of Hindi was introduced during those days. That apart, Sanskrit was Greek and Latin for me. All the scriptures were in Sanskrit. Even utterance was in Sanskrit. So I could not reproduce. And other learners were there of lower ages. They were much junior to me, of 8th standard or 9th standard. I was in the 10th standard. So I had a self-respect during those days because I could not tolerate any kind of humiliation or insult during my school days. So this teacher, he scolded me in front of them. He insulted me, humiliated me. Look here, the children of lower ages, they could buy out and present it. You could not do it. You are good for nothing. Then he started beating me with that wire, electric wire. Still I remember. Then I told him, don't beat me with that wire and all.
What was the age that time, sir?
I was 10th standard. It means hardly 15 years. 15 years. I was furious because he is beating me. And I could not by heart and reproduce. I could respect my own inability to by heart because I understood in those days it was not the way of by hearting or mugging up or a kind of rote learning. Then I told him, sir, you give me 10 days time, I will by heart everything provided you make me understand. Because you have to translate your Sanskrit scripture into Kannada or Tulu. So you make me understand. Once I understand, I will challenge, I'll swear, I'll bet on my lost shoe that next weekend I'll reproduce flawlessly. Then immediately he was not able to take up the challenge. He told me, you are a wooden-headed mental person. You are not fit for learning these Vedic scriptures. Your father was a high priest and all those things, but it is not there in your blood, your DNA. You are useless fellow, you are not for this. So tomorrow onwards, you need not come to my class.
You are happy, I guess.
Really happy. There in that place, I learned another important lesson, not found in any textbook or in the syllabus. It means two things. One thing is, first you understand it, then you will digest it, you will internalize it, you will be able to recall and reproduce effortlessly. The second thing is, whatever you do, you must enjoy each and every bit of it. Then only you will get yourself engaged in the process. Because your engagement is more important than just casual, mechanical, dry involvement. It is not the physical involvement, or it is not even mental involvement. We have to get ourselves engaged in the process with a sense of purpose, pride and direction. Then only that task, that process will become very close to your heart. Then you will love it. Then only you will be happy. So it means that at that time I understood, if I want to get happiness for my entire lifetime, I must start loving the process of doing. Forget about the outcome of that. So if you take good care of the process, results will come to you automatically. If you want to enjoy the process should be simplified. You should be clearly educated about the process of learning it or acquiring the knowledge. And you must be told well in advance what would be the utility or the use of learning it, in what way you can apply it, something like that. So it means, that is what Steve Covey says in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in your mind. Before you start doing anything, you must know the purpose for which you are doing it.
Well begun is
Half done. Because before taking your journey, you must know what is your destination. Otherwise, it becomes totally nonsense. That was the major turning point of leaving my hometown, staying in another person's place, and adjusting my lifestyle and changing my mindset to suit the situation. At that time, I understood adaptability should be the most important virtue of a mankind. Adoption is different thing. It is nothing but a copycat. See, adopting someone's practice, you are adopting. You cannot become better than that person. Normally, it is called benchmarking. Benchmarking the best practice. My idea is you should move beyond the benchmarked best practice. Look beyond that. That is possible only when you unleash your potential within. Otherwise, it is not possible. It doesn't make any meaning to it. So I learned adaptability. That is one thing. Another thing I learned there was no way except changing my mindset, changing myself. Then I realized at that point of time, when I was 15 years old, I must learn to change, then change to learn, then learn to learn. From the process of changing myself, that first I have to unlearn what I have wrongly learned from the first standard to 7th standard in my own home at Kokkada, in the presence of my father and mother and my siblings. It's a kind of domesticated atmosphere. Everything was there. Life supporting system was there. But in Dharmasala, during my high school days, particularly during my 10th standard, it was taken away. So 8th, 9th, 10th, I have to live in a different kind of atmosphere. So change, yes, I understood. Unlearn what you have wrongly learned. Then I had to relearn new things in a new atmosphere called Dharmasthala. So mentoring of Dr. Virendra Hegade, his brother Harshendra Kumar, Harshendra Hegade. So it means at that time I realized no pains, no gains. No pain, no gain. So you cannot achieve anything in your life unless you try for that. Then I adopted a formula. You do it, you fail. You do it again, you fail better. So it's a kind of continuous learning, improvement, development. I call it C-LID. Continuous learning, improvement and development. Because continuous improvement is possible only through continuous learning. Continuous learning is possible only when you change yourself, change your perception, your thought process, your feelings, action tendencies, and finally or eventually your actions or behavioral patterns. And adapt. You have to adapt yourself to changing circumstances. That should be your virtue. Because everything is not ready-made. That is required. That was the major turning point. Then another important turning point, because later on I became lecturer and all in Mangalore University. In 94-95, I got an offer from National Institute of Training for Industrial Engineering, NITI, Powai, Mumbai, as assistant professor. So I had to teach postgraduate diploma in industrial engineering students in human resource management. During those days, it was personnel management industrial relations.
Was it which year, sir?
94-95. So 1 year I was there in that institute. So at that time I could realize you must get out of the comfort zone in order to excel yourself. Because all days are not Sundays. And you must know how to unleash your potential within yourself. Never underestimate yourself. Because you are endowed with infinite potential to develop yourself. Sky is the limit. During those days, I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book. In that book, he says, if you aim at the sky, you will at least reach the trees. If you only aim at the trees, you can't even take off the ground. You'll remain there only. So it means at that time I realized, no. So it means you are the creator of your own destiny. Never take things lightly. You have to work towards that. It means you have to invest meaningful efforts with a sense of purpose, pride, and direction. Never suffer from inferiority complex. So my formula was very simple. Trust God, the Almighty. There is something, some spirit which will control the universe. That is the first thing. Second thing, trust yourself, not any other human being on this earth. Yeah, trust yourself. Believe in yourself. Be positive. And you have to write your own life scripture on your forehead. You can, so you will. So it means at that time, I developed a kind of courage, confidence, and conviction when I was a assistant professor in National Institute of Training for Industrial Engineering, Mumbai during 94-95. Courage to fail, confidence to win, and conviction to succeed. So it means it is a different kind of atmosphere. I had to go out of the comfort zone. I had to engage myself in a process called out-of-box thinking. Because every month I had to design a training program for different corporate people, right from the gatekeeper to the CEO. So senior level executives, mid level executives, junior level executives, and all those things. Sometimes graduate engineer trainees. Because I don't call myself as an expert during those days. But anyway, I had a passion to learn and share the knowledge with others. I can make you understand, and I could see how you are assimilating the learning, assimilation process, because it was largely written on the face of the learners. That used to give me a lot of satisfaction. So I had to design at least a 5-day program every month. I had to prepare the study material called reading material for them, and I had to engage class 9 to 5 every day. So it means it was a real challenging task, new task, which is highly unheard of in a very conventional university type of teaching, learning, evaluation atmosphere. So institution teaching. So one day I had to interact with a very senior person, aged 58 years old, from the German Remedies. So I was making the presentation. German Remedy is a pharmaceutical company. So the senior executive was one of the participants in my training program. So I was making the presentation. During those days I was using overhead projector, OHP. Yes. The transparency, it was handwritten by me. Yeah. At that time my handwriting was there and all those things. It was not visible or legible, whatever it is. He told me, this is not the presentation required for executives. You are belittling us and you are not professional. You may call yourself professional, but you are less professional. It is unbecoming of what you call a trainer, particularly in this National Institute. Very critical. And he was asking me, what's your age? And at the 30, 36 or something like that. What's your age? I did not reply. Immediately he said, I have got the experience of your age.
Very senior person.
Then I handled one thing. It's an unforgettable experience in my life. It's a kind of a real challenge which I handled in a very effective and efficient manner. I take a lot of pride in the way in which I handled during those days. I told him, experience. I used a whiteboard with a marker pen. I wrote the word experience. I asked German Remedy fellow, according to you, what do you mean by experience? How do you define it? Conceptually and operationally, how do you define it? He told experience is nothing but length of service. Okay, now I'll pick up the thread from there. Experience is equal to length of service. Length of service is equal to number of years service put in by a person. Okay, let us say a trainer who has got 20 years of experience. Another trainer like me, I am only 5 years experience. Now you tell me who is superior according to you. Then the first person with the 20 years of experience. Then I told him, I will put before you one challenge. You think and answer it. Because I changed the side. I started asking questions, posing questions. I told him, the hypothesis or the question is like this. Seniors need not be superiors. Oldest need not be the ablest. Therefore, I say the person with 5 years of experience, this trainer, may be better than the first trainer with the 20 years of experience, provided he has got 1 year experience, 20 years old. But here 5 year experience, 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. Total, how much? Value addition. Then I told him, now I am redefining this concept experience. It is not the number of years service put in by a person. You have to ask yourself or ask him or her what you have put into those years of service. The value creation or value addition every year. Therefore, a person's 20 year service should not be 1 year experience, 20 years old. So I answered him in a very befitting manner. He was taken aback. You may not believe. It was amazing and incredible. He came near to me and touched my feet. Then he told me, I see Baba in you. I asked him, which Baba? He said, Shirdi Sai Baba in you. So that was a kind of eternal bliss for me. That gave me a lot of confidence. Then onwards, no question of looking back, I used to accept challenges as and when they come to me, with a sense of purpose, pride and direction, with a sense of courage, confidence and conviction, with an internal sound belief that I can, so I will. Therefore, trust God or Almighty. Second one, trust yourself. Third one, trust the environment. Because nature is given. You must know how to get along with the nature. Here comes the role and relevance of adaptability of the highest order, agility of a mankind. How do you adjust yourself? So that kind of bomb-based my training experience was a window to a new world. It was not just same teaching experience of the first year, reproduced the second year to the third year and so on and so forth. You must get out of the comfort zone, accept new challenges. Then at that time he realized my philosophy was first you deserve then desire. Unless you have the caliber to accept the new assignment, don't try for that. You should be able. Because I must always listen to my inner voice, not to others' voice. I must listen to my inner voice. That is the inner commitment of mine. Then I must carefully watch my inner ethical compass to get my directions.
It is called
Intuition. Intuition development. Should I go to this way or that way? Should I take trodden path or should I have the courage and confidence to take an untrodden path, the road not taken by others? Can I swim in the rough sea? What my inner voice tells me?
Yeah, that gives you correct direction.
Correct direction. So that helped me to get along with the nature. When the nature, you have got ideas, you have got people, you have got things around with you. You have got so many people called people of goodwill. And you realize that you are blessed because of people who are alive and also because of people who are dead. They contributed in the form of literature, in the form of books, or their ideas. We are laying our hands on those things. So that was a kind of real major point. The third turning point was I got postdoctoral research fellowship under Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme. And I had an opportunity to work as a postdoctoral research fellow in Nottingham Trent University, Nottingham Business School, Nottingham, England. 1 year full. So my mentor was Professor Jim Stewart. So for the first time, I was going to a foreign land, that too the Britishers who ruled us for 200 years, something like that, a kind of cultural shock was there for me. So, new people, new land, a new country, new style of living, new circumstances, new challenges, new demands, new expectations. So many things, everything was new. At that time, I realized I must be able to predict unpredictable things in my life. Everything cannot be engineered, everything cannot be doctored, everything cannot be put into black and white, because there is something which is not known to you. And sometimes you need not try to know which is not known to you. We say normally ignorance is bliss. Sometimes you may have to adopt the policy called let me cross the bridge when it comes to me. So it means you will be able to handle the problem then and there itself. So it means handling the problem up front. That requires a lot of presence of mind and reflex. And again, courage to fail, confidence to win, and conviction to succeed. I was abundantly blessed with those things. So, the interaction was entirely different with my mentor. It was not a research guide or something like that, It was not a teacher relationship. He was my friend. He was also learning from me, and I was carefully watching him. So at that time, I learned one important value called keen observation. We can learn so many things from people around us. We can watch people performing, and you must intentionally watch people and draw clues from them and connect with your existing stock of knowledge called backup files in your mind and create something new for yourself. So it means that will discipline our thought process. So that was my foreign learning experience. And he was not a coach. He was a mentor, of course. He was not spoon feeding me. He was telling me, I'll give you 2 books. The timeline is 1 week. Today is Monday. Next Monday, you should come for discussion. Discussion will be only for 15 minutes. Out of 15 minutes, 5 minutes, you must be able to sum up whatever you have understood by reading those 2 books. Then another 5 minutes, I will throw questions one after the other. Last 5 minutes, you must be able to comprehend those questions and answer one after the other based on the inputs received from the book and the synergy created by you. It means your own contributions or your own additions or deletions to the inputs received from those books. I want to know. At that time I realized change is important, but change taking place only in some pockets of excellence will not help us in the holistic development of the personality. It means I was focusing more on what you call transformation. Transformation is different from change, because change takes place in some pockets of excellence, and if you change something here, there must be corresponding changes or parametrical changes in other dimensions also in order to create, build, nurture and sustain that kind of equilibrium. It's just like riding the bicycle. The moment you stop, you will fall down. So balancing mechanism. So at that time I realized it is not the change which will shape and reshape your personality. It should be meaningful changes in several parts of your personality, so that will contribute to the holistic development of the personality, and knowingly or unknowingly it will bring about transformation. So transformation is more sensible and more important than changes taking place only in some pockets of excellence. Another important point I learned when I was in Nottingham was it was not the perfection which will bring difference in the lives of others or in our own lives. So it should be excellence. At that time I realized excellence is not an act but a habit. It is not enough if I am excellent at this point of time. Tomorrow also I must be excellent, and I must be continuously excellent in whatever I do. So it's a continuous process. Just like learning. Learning is a lifelong process. That's what we say, lifelong learning process. So then I realized excellence is nothing but putting our best foot forward, whether you are doing right or wrong. It means at that time I realized doing right things rightly, first time and every time, is the real significant step in the right direction towards success or achieving excellence. Therefore, perfection is not important. You cannot be perfect all the time, and all people cannot be perfect. So, what we require is we must be excellent. It means we must put our best foot forward.
Dear sir, thank you very much for enlightening our audience with your experiences. I hope the present day youth will be motivated and they might get courage also because of your sharing of the turning points in this episode. Thanks a lot, sir.